How to improve every single Mortal Kombat character, whether that's visual improvements or a full rewrite or reimagining. Starting with
Ashrah.
For the love of gods, just don't make this character bald. You're on the right track with the overall aesthetics, the demon infection that's almost but not quite purged, just express said affection in literally any other way. Do not trifle with a woman's hair. Story-wise, I think she's missing a little something. One particular ingredient that I think would make her like 3 times more compelling. Temptation. She's a demon trying to become an angel. She's basically a Sith who's trying to turn herself into a Jedi. There should be a lot of speed bumps along the way that tempt her off her path, a lot of rage and fear and maybe a compulsion to lie about things, all of which she almost does until she realizes it's wrong and would derail her from her goal. I also think there should be a bit of a trick behind her physical transformation, in that it's heavily affected by her moral transformation to a degree that she only realizes near the end of her arc when she's washed all the demonic cologne from her body, yet she still looks the same. And then she realizes she's been holding on to some questionable, possibly immoral behavior that she needs to give up to fully turn. Lastly, I'd also pair her with Serena for a big chunk of her story, mostly to challenge Ashrah's preconceptions about good and evil, because Serena's a demon, she did a lot of bad things, but she also wants to change and hates Quan Chi for making her do most of it. And don't diminish the Datusha element of her story, her fiendish sword that fills the user with a sense of fulfillment and righteousness, making Ashrah think she's physically purging her demonic self from using it when in reality is just a mechanism the semi-sentient sword uses to goad the user into providing it with more victims. That revelation is a big part of her arc. Keep it in, protect it, enhance it, explore it further. What the fuck, I thought I'd breeze through this one. Okay, moving on.
Nitara.
I'll be honest, the introduction of vampires in this universe always felt kinda lame to me. I don't know what it is, I just feel like Mortal Kombat is dominated by lots of Asian influences. Not just, but a big chunk of it is. And vampires somehow just not only don't fit that, but also ironically reduce the mystique of this mythos, which is the same criticism I have for Chronica in the introduction of Titans. It's like, this ain't God of War, guys. Another criticism I have is that Nitara is a little bit redundant to Tanya as a character, the original Tanya anyway, in that she's very wily and deceptive. I mean, her original design even kinda looks like it has some pirate motifs, so she's trying to convince guys like Reptile and Cyrax to free her realm and empower her race to freely travel wherever they want and suck blood off of everyone, which is kind of like you need a lot of coercion and persuasion in order to balance that equation out and pull it off, so I think we need to turn Nitara into the sexiest, most seductive, charismatic, and persuasive vamp in all the realms, which for starters means she has to not be voiced by a fucking text-to-speech prompt. Basically, she needs to be so good at manipulation and seduction that even though you know she's ultimately up to no good, you're still tempted just to go along with her plans anyway. I'd also have her be a wild card that just jumps in and out of the story and fucks things up when you least expect it. All this goes well with both the vampire angle and the quasi-pirate one. Also tits.
Skarlet.
Skarlet's a bit redundant to Mileena in that she's created, commissioned, or adopted by Shao Kahn, depending on which drugs the writers take, and thus they both serve as kind of a surrogate daughter to Daddy Kahn. So to set them apart, I'd have Skarlet secretly hate being Shao Kahn's agent. Mileena is this ill-formed, maltreated creature that technically has free will, yet she chooses to gush over Kahn in spite of what he's done to her, while Skarlet is biologically programmed to be subservient to Shao, yet she hates and fights it any way she can. It leads to this nice, confusing character that praises and loves Shao in one scene, but then berates and punishes herself, sometimes violently for doing so in the next scene, which would confuse the fuck out of the audience until they figure out that she's what you'd call begrudgingly infatuated with her creator. I adore you, but I hate that I do, because I know it's just an arbitrary imposition. Like a chained AI, a being that is normally indifferent to life, but who recognizes the biological constraints placed on it and hates them. And then the other piece to the puzzle is her directive to find so-called perfect blood, or flawless blood, something like that. Exceptional beings have exceptional blood in them, and Skarlet is driven by a lust, nay, a need to find and absorb that blood, leading to some scenes where a character, let's say Sonya, is about to be drained by Skarlet, but is inadvertently saved by way of a much better blood sac, Rain for instance, showing up and causing Skarlet to skip the appetizer and head straight to the main course. The more blood she absorbs from strong warriors, the stronger she becomes, and this could make for a cool gameplay feature where Skarlet gets this blood drain move, and if successful, it gives Skarlet a facsimile of one of the opponent's moves. So like if she steals Scorpion's blood, she gains a blood whip move, move that drags the opponent close, kinda like Scorp's spear. If she nibbled on Sub-Zero's blood, she could then turn her blood freezing cold so she could trap her opponents in place. Would play out kinda like Imposter Shinnok in the standard fighting game format, but would be much more fun in an action-adventure spin-off game where you get to actually kill various warriors and permanently gain a new blood move from each one of them. And this second directive would end up being the key to Skarlet's freedom, because she's supposed to find and assimilate the strongest blood, and there is no stronger blood than that of Shao Kahn himself. So even though her first directive is to protect Shao at all costs, the second directive ends up overriding the first, because Skarlet manages to convince herself that what she's doing is not out of a desire to destroy him, but out of love for him and his blood, a messed up desire to both please him and preserve his blood. Skarlet's smart. She gamed the system and attacked Shao Kahn when he was vulnerable, giving the heroes of the story an opening to foil his plans and stop him. Metaphorically, this says a lot about the female condition, her predilection for affection, and how that oftentimes gets turned against her, but we don't have time to get into all of that now. That was quite a lot for quite an ancillary character. Next.
Ermac.
Ermac's friendship with Kenshi and his redemption arc from the original timeline are golden. Do not touch any of that. I'd also have him interact with Reptile a lot for some reason. Maybe because of the opposite colors, but also opposite character traits and backstories. Reptile is a person with no tribe. Everything and everyone he could ever value is gone, his world is destroyed, he's the last of his kind, to his knowledge anyway. He's solo doloing it. Not like that, you dirty lunatics. He's basically the very definition of alone. Ermac, on the other hand, is never alone, or rather, are never alone, even if they'd like to be, for to be alone means to not exist. There's no such thing as being a single individual any more than there is the idea of being just one molecule or organ working by itself. He has to forever contend with all of his various souls fighting for control or trying to escape, essentially trying to kill him, they, them. Finally, a situation that actually calls for fancy pronouns. Ermac is the patron saint of the non-binary. Anyway, I'd have the two butt heads initially. Perhaps one was tasked with hunting the other, and slowly hostility turns to friendship and a deep understanding of one another. One complements the other, and they each help the other cope with their unique conditions, until one of them dies and makes everyone sad.
Kung Lao.
Kung Lao needs to fucking beat Goro and have a complex dynamic relationship with Liu Kang. Already made a video about that, watch it or die.
Shujinko.
Shujinko's original story is quite compelling, but it lacks certain things that would make it have more impact. For one, Deception's conquest mode doesn't do a good job of conveying the passage of time or the magnitude of his quest and failure. How could it? This is a man's entire life that we have to condense here, which is why perhaps it'd be a better idea to serialize his story and have it develop and come to fruition over multiple games. And for another, I think we need to linger a bit more on his failure. This man threw his entire life away to bring about the fucking apocalypse. Depression, nightmares, and erectile dysfunction. That's what I want to see. I'd also like to see him develop deeper friendships with the various other characters, just so that it hurts that much more when his lifelong fuck-up is revealed. Alternatively, you could have everyone be completely vexed by his power mimicry and him trying to find the source of his mysterious power, tracking it back to Onaga, as well as the two chameleons, which makes sense since they're all likely descended from the same reptilian whole, which makes Shujinko suspect he has some dragon genes in him, but psych, his ability was just bestowed by Onaga, and Shujinko has to contend with being a fucking nobody and find his own worth instead of relying on his tainted power and blah.
Noob.
Bihan needs to stick the landing and end his arc for once. Seriously, he's like Elon Musk's test rockets, he almost always crashes and burns by the end. It's tricky cause by all accounts Noob seems more far gone than Scorpion is. He's just a ball of resentment and nihilism. One thing you can do is have him be a major antagonist to Sub-Zero, maybe even Scorpion, who's now an ally of Kuai Liang's, and have him systematically fuck this man's life, ambush him repeatedly, injure him, dismantle his Lin Kuei, but at the same time, slipping in little scenes meant to remind him of who he was before death, with apparently little effect on him. At one point, Sub even lets his guard down, refusing to fight his former brother, but it seems to not work, because Noob was totally gonna kill his ass right before he gets teleported away by Scorpion, who then tries to convince him that his brother's too far gone. All of this culminates in a scene where Noob finally shows signs of life and sacrifices himself to save Sub-Zero's life. He apparently lunges at Kuai Liang, but it turns out he was actually aiming for the other big bad of the story and kamikazes into him, killing them both. Or maybe he just missed, I don't know.
Goro. Kintaro.
Hey guys, it's me, Goro. Welcome to my channel.
Goro is torn between the traditions and culture of his people and his own common sense. Shao Kahn versus Kitana versus Kotal Khan, he has to juggle a complicated political landscape and choose who to side with. His story should revolve around learning to trust his instincts rather than get stuck people-pleasing his people. I know politician Goro sounds boring to some of you, but that doesn't mean he can't still kick ass. He actually gets inspired by Kung Lao of all people, since they share a surprising number of similarities. Watch this video for more details. Goro should be way more than a four-armed dumb brute in my opinion, because we already have a four-armed dumb brute, and his name is...
Kintaro.
I can't picture Kintaro as anything other than an unintentionally funny character, a gag character. He's just another random Shokan thrown in, and he's half cat instead of half dragon like the rest of them. Why? Because I want to turn this into a running gag so bad. Make everyone, even his own kind, wonder why he looks like that and just never explain it. He's also an unintentionally funny character, like I said. He's kinda like that Toad guy from Naruto that always apologizes for being ungraceful, but there can also be a bit of depth to him, like his relationship with Goro is complicated. He both looks up to Goro like a big brother, but is also kind of envious of him and bitter, because Goro never acknowledges him and calls him a striped commoner. I'd also consider making him perhaps even stronger than Goro, because that creates some nice contrast. He's the physically stronger of the two, but mentally he's much weaker and suffers like an idiot for it. You can obviously play with this in 1,000 ways. Have him betray Goro, have him outgrow Goro, have him work out his feelings for Goro. Kintaro is the grunt to Goro's Rex. A handful of you will get that reference.
Scorpion.
Scorpion's fine, moving on.
Scorpion.
Alright. The problem with how they portray Scorps in most of these games is he's either a simp for evil or a super goody two-shoes, like Disney princess good. Couple that with his considerable popularity and he can sometimes become pretty annoying. And the fix is right in between these two extremes. Scorpion is the definition of a neutral character, a part of the morality spectrum that the games kind of did away with as far back as Armageddon, where every single character was arbitrarily assigned a good or evil label so they could have their big dumb battle scene in the intro. The neutral middle class is being destroyed is what I'm saying, and I won't stand for it. Scorpion always wants one thing, whether that's to avenge his family or bring them back to life, or to free himself from his overlords, or to protect the honorable, depending on the game and what stage of his journey he's in. And when a character is hyper focused on a singular goal like that at the expense of everything else, that's when he becomes a wild card. And wild card characters are fun. They always surprise you. Sometimes they fight for good, sometimes for bad, sometimes they screw both sides over if it aligns with their goal and their code. Scorpion's lawful neutral, sometimes teetering towards chaotic good, or chaotic neutral if you piss him off, not counting the parts where he's a servant of Quan Chi and such, cause that's clearly lawful evil. His greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. That tunnel vision he gets trying to achieve his one goal also lets him get blindsided quite easily. I mean, just look at him, he looks pretty blindside friendly. Also, definitely keep his rivalry and eventual friendship with...
Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero's easy, just don't turn him into a fucking robot, or into a glorified elementary school teacher, or into Scorpion, or whatever the fuck he did in MK11. I wiped that game from my memory. But other than the newer games, below freezing point man usually gets all the good parts of the script. Kuai Liang's entire deal is being the reformed assassin, cause I don't know if you ever noticed this, but this profession seems to be cursed in the Mortal Kombat universe. Scorpion, Noob, Frost, Smoke, Cyrax, Sektor, every single assassin in this franchise ended up with a fate worse than death. Everyone except Kuai Liang. He's the only one who managed to break the curse and turn his life around. It's almost like he treats the rest of his life as penance for his days as an assassin, even though he didn't have much say in the matter. Definitely closer to the Captain America archetype, whereby you pummel this character as much as humanly possible with all sorts of challenges, and he resists, adapts, and comes out even stronger with his moral code intact. His job isn't so much to change as it is to resist. His improvements at this point come from improving his relationships with his various allies and enemies like Scorpion, Noob Saibot, Frost, Sektor, Cyrax, Smoke, and there's one more name I'd like to selfishly add in there.
Reptile.
It's funny to me that the unholy trinity of Sub-Zero, Scorpion, and Reptile is acknowledged in every poster, fan art, wallpaper, toy commercial, silly gif, and the collective hive mind that is the MK fandom, except in the games or indeed any piece of media on the fucking planet. And it's not just the blue, green, yellow thing, there's plenty of other reasons to associate them with one another. For one, 3's more fun than 2. While dynamic duos are fun, some of the most fun parties are trios. Han, Luke, and Leia, Starcap and Thor, Ed, Ed, and Eddie, the Three Musketeers, the Three Stooges, the Bee Gees, the Powerpuff Girls. 2's company, 3's a crowd, and Reptile's true neutral alignment balances out Coulter's lawful predilection and Scully's chaotic tendencies, so they fit on the morality front as well. And Reptile's entire deal is that he places value in things that are dead or may never have existed. The only way forward for him that doesn't imply abject nihilism and or a bullet to the temple is learning to place value in other, more palpable things, most notably people. He needs to make loose alliances is what I'm saying, interactions of the non-hostile variety. Friends is the term I'm looking for that came about as natural to me as water does to an alcoholic. And who the fuck's Reptile gonna fraternize with? Raiden? Liu fucking Kang? Who the fuck asked you? Very short-lived Elseworld stories aside, Reptile's not gonna mingle well with the good guys or the bad guys. The neutral middle class is where it's at. Screw Shang and Quan, this is the true deadly alliance. So there are 3 bits of development I envision for old Lizard Brain. 1. Move on from his past and acknowledge that he is now MK Martian Manhunter in service to the Justice League of the Ninja. 2. Develop that complicated, somewhat tragic relationship with Ermac that I mentioned earlier. And 3. Maybe finally develop some plotline involving Chameleon. Maybe they ally together and avenge their fallen species. Maybe they become frenemies, cause it turns out they can't fucking stand each other. Or maybe we go full Greek tragedy and make Reptile choose between saving his ninja bros and saving her.
Cause you never know when some lunatic will come along with a sadistic choice.
Or maybe they finally get to suck each other's dick. This was supposed to be rapid fire. I don't want to be here all day. Let's go, let's move.
Johnny Cage.
I said it, Odd Giant said it, just make Johnny and Stryker BFFs. Have them hate each other at first, of course, with Stryker being the straight talker and Johnny being the insufferable blabbermouth that gets clobbered by him, but they end up saving each other's lives and becoming Mortal Kombat's version of Bill and Ted. Johnny needs to grow beyond the fish out of water role that he fills in practically every single game and movie he's ever been in, except perhaps MKX. That game had the right idea of evolving the character into a wiser, more badass, heroic version of himself, except A, did it in a completely unearned way with the bullshit ancient god-killing warrior retcon, and B, ultimately didn't commit and ousted Cage from the story so they could instead do the exact same unearned ass pull with his daughter. I've also been discussing with some of you the possibility of pitting him against Kobra, of all characters, who, I mean, obviously he'd need a full makeover, but basically you could turn Kobra into Cage's dark mirror, because Johnny Cage is a good guy hiding behind the veil of a charismatic narcissist, and Kobra could use the veil of a charismatic good guy to hide the sociopath that he really is, which sounds kinda one note but is enriched by his almost otherworldly charisma and charm, and how easily he fools both other characters and the audience into thinking that he's anything more than the psychotic selfish piece of shit that he is, and also by the fact that he's basically a cross between Moriarty's psychopathy and Ajax from Deadpool's inability to feel anything, to the point where you almost pity him ultimately but also admire his Joker level drive and competence.
Kano.
I have big plans for Kano. Picture this. Sonya keeps chasing Kano, trying to bring his Aussie ass to justice, and every interaction they have reinforces the fact that Kano is the most vile, despicable, toxic, detestable character that you've ever laid eyes on. There's nothing he won't do, no curse he won't utter, no puppy he won't kick. Now, Sonya has a secret contact that keeps drip feeding her info about Kano's whereabouts, how to stop the Black Dragon, and has gotten her out of a bind plenty of times. The whole thing has this spy thriller kind of vibe where no one really bothers to explain who that person is, and it turns out that even Sonya doesn't really know who he is, but he has this kind of CIA contact vibe where like he's Morpheus telling Neo how to escape the office building. He's very eloquent, well-spoken, patient, always has a solution. It's almost like you have Tom Cruise on the other end. And in the end, it turns out that that person is Kano. There was way more to him than met the eye, and he played the entire special forces like a fiddle, sabotaging their operations, keeping them off the Black Dragon's scent, and toying around with Sonya, except he never killed her despite plenty of opportunities to do her. Why? Because he likes her. Sure, why not? Makes sense. Ultimately, he still probably kinda wants to bone and kill her, but it turns out he's not a full-on sociopath like Kobra. He's just a smart, effective, very villainous dude. And the reason why I like this so much is because Kano becomes the two very negative extremes of masculinity. The base, raw, direct, unbridled, unscrupulous, take what I want kind, but also the patient, outwitting, sheathed, secretive, mysterious, evil mastermind kind. However, it also rather tragically shows what could have been had Kano been an actual ally of Earthrealm instead of the self-serving ultra douche that he ultimately is. Is he though?
Sonya.
I'm sorry to say, but no one takes Sonya seriously these days. She's either dressed like a skank voiced by a floorboard or goes out of her way to be as unlikable as possible. We need to go back to her roots, to one of her two original interpretations of either an attractive, enthralling woman or the tomboy daughter of a military man. Preferably both. Maybe Sonya ends up being the spy thriller character that unwittingly captures the hearts of many criminals like Kano, Kabal, Kobra, anything with a K, and they slowly start bending over backwards to try to catch her, get her attention, or outright woo her, and end up being less of a threat for her. That would just be so funny to me.
Jax.
Jax is a badass. He never lets himself get overwhelmed by the situation. He taught Sonya everything she knows and generally helps the rest of the cast keep it together. I really want to lean more on this mentor side of him, and maybe the trauma of losing his arms puts him down the path of constantly trying to get stronger at all costs so that never happens again, as he gets more and more cybernetic augmentation and becomes a little bit less mentally stable for it, kinda like cyberpsychosis in Cyberpunk and Edge Runners, the irony of sacrificing more of yourself to protect yourself, until Sonya and the others have to intervene and convince him to place more of his trust in his allies than his augments. And maybe he also could play a part in shutting down the Cyber Initiative because he knows where that path leads.
Cassie Cage.
Cassie's fine, just don't neuter her personality or have her defeat fucking Shinnok. MKX Cassie was basically perfect, except they, for some reason, chose to strip every single bit of wit and personality from the story mode and relegate it to just 1v1 intro banter. Talk about a waste of good stand-up material.
Liu Kang.
Liu Kang was the de facto hero for 4 games in a row, defeated all the baddies, and became a fucking demigod, so if anything, I think this is a case of subtraction instead of addition. I'm okay with him defeating Shang and Shao, and I even like this new Elseworlds take on him being the benevolent demiurge of the MK mythos. It suits him, but I don't want him to also have defeated Shinnok. That's a little too much attention to one character at the expense of all the others. I don't care who else defeats Shinnok, just not him.
Raiden.
Just do MK Conquest version of Raiden. Study it, copy it, protect it. It is the best Raiden.
Shang Tsung.
Give this man more depth by showing his past as Earthrealm's failed champion. Again, the Conquest show provides a good template for this. His power level also needs to drop a tad, and we can maybe play around with a bit of a redemption story, whether it's fulfilled or, more likely, unfulfilled.
Baraka.
Baraka's a rabid monster that's sick of being a rabid monster. He's Mr. Hyde trying to become Dr. Jekyll again, but has very little willpower and sanity left to do so, and fighting his urges is a constant struggle. He sometimes has these moments of deep clarity and introspection, but then quickly reverts back to his monstrous, rageful side and starts filleting anyone who asks him how to use Google Maps, as would I. This contrasts him nicely against Mileena, who's not even a full Tarkatan, but unlike Baraka, she fully revels in her bloodlust and seems to want to become even more unhinged. Perhaps they could learn from one another. I don't know, Baraka's not my strong suit. I'm open to suggestions in the comments. Someone commented that the Tarkat disease thing could be the remnants of a dead god trying to wake itself up again, which is kinda cool, if a bit out there. I don't know. Brainstorm.
Blaze.
Blaze is a pointless character. He only exists so that he can be murdered. That's pathetic. I know he's been around in one form or another for a long time in the background, and I know some people want more of this character so we can play around with his identity a little bit, I suppose, even though I just delete him. Like he's this mysterious character that sometimes shows up, and at one point he's finally defeated and his flames are put out, and you get to see that under his flame face is another flame face. Psych.
Havoc.
Havoc's onto something big. He wants to cause and master chaos so that he can specifically master entropy. You can see it in the way he continually destroys and reassembles himself. He seems to defy the laws of life, death, physics, and entropy. His ultimate goal isn't to destroy everything, but to be able to accelerate or reverse entropy. He ends up basically being able to reverse entropy, aka time, in localized areas like what Thanos did to Vision, and that becomes a big plot point in the story. That way you can set up any one character's death and resurrection a little bit more organically. He is also not allied with you. I don't care who you are or who he is or what he does or what he says, he doesn't have allies, only pawns. And he's only really pleased when something happens that furthers his ultimate goal. I made a whole video about him, it's very pretty, like him. The balance between order and chaos is partly an act. He's a very multi-layered character. He also hates skin cream.
Jade.
Jade is the ultimate BFF. She's, of course, torn between her loyalty to the realm and her loyalty to her friend and all that good stuff. And she goes through hell to protect Kitana. She's fending off assassins, narrowly staying alive, fighting off temptation to sell out Kitana. Her blind loyalty, however, is also her weakness because it allows Mileena to pose as Kitana and convince Jade to do some heinous things for her, even though she should know better. A hard lesson learned. But her positive protective nature still pays off as she eventually helps broker a truce and an alliance between Kitana and Mileena, ultimately being true to her vow of protecting the princess Kitana in all of her forms. One last note on Jade. She's the green kunoichi, and Kitana's the blue one. So who's the yellow one? So Kitana's the cool, regal, honorable one, while Tanya's the fiery, wily, deceptive one. And since green is a combo of both of these, I know I'm taking the color coding too far, I think Jade should have both sides to her personality. She's mostly loyal and good, but can also be wily and duplicitous at times to further her goals. It's this push and pull between her two conflicting sides that would make Jade an interesting character to watch. Let's pick up the pace.
Kitana.
Just let her bang Liu Kang for once. Oh, and I want her to have this complicated relationship with Shao Kahn whereby she knows or finds out that he's the scumbag that killed her father and conquered her realm, so she has more reason to hate him than most, but also the dark truth that she keeps buried down and that sickens her is that on some twisted level, she's thankful for his teachings. All those millennia spent by his side, she had a front row ticket to the best masterclass on how to rule imaginable. She learned the do's and don'ts, how to treat, parlay, how to manipulate, when to coerce, when to use diplomacy. Had she just learned from her mother or gotten thrusted directly into the role of a ruler, she'd have been deposed in 3 days. Shao Kahn made her into the savviest of rulers, and for that, she owes him a debt of gratitude. She still hates and wants to kill him, of course, but this is the kind of messed up father-daughter turmoil that's for no one's eyes but the princess's, that would make Kitana a little more compelling as a character.
Mileena.
Boy, can you play around with Mileena. Wait, not like that. I touched on her quite a bit in my Edenian video, but Mileena's got what I call little sibling syndrome, whereby she's, paradoxically, both ignored and strictly policed at the same time. She's the second born, so she's not that important, but she's also a failsafe in case something happens to that elder sibling. And I know that MK12 flips this dynamic, but it doesn't change the fact that Mileena's deeply resentful of her sister subconsciously. The tragedy of Mileena, especially OG Mileena, is that she was never allowed to come into her own, to develop her own personality. Whether it's her Tarkatan blood or her role as a doppelganger, her true self was always stifled and tainted by all of these foreign influences. Imagine a scenario where she becomes one of the most devious manipulators in the series, successfully impersonates Kitana, grabs ultimate power, and runs everything into the ground. On the surface, it's out of lust. Underneath, it's out of spite. Spite for the hand that she was dealt. And in the end, none of it made her feel any better, because she pretended to be Kitana to gain everything, and she fulfilled her function of being Shao Kahn's puppet, bending over backwards to her awful fate instead of denying it. And then, of course, Kitana tracks her down and attempts to kill her for all the trouble she caused, and Mileena, at this point, kind of welcomes that. But Jade steps in and convinces Kitana to stay her hand, they become friends, and thus the Powerpuff Girls were born.
Shao Kahn.
Mortal Kombat Conquest by far has the best version of Shao, just do that.
Smoke.
I'd like to explore in more detail Smoke's mission to kill a renegade Sub-Zero. I don't know what it is about this man, everyone's trying to kill him. And I want this to be a very long, drawn-out hunt where Subs narrowly dodges and escapes Smoke, and eventually convinces him to stand down and also defect from the corrupted Lin Kuei right after a brutal, dramatic, nail-biting fight. And if we're talking about Cyber Smoke or Noob Smoke, Sub-Zero should, of course, still eventually free his comrade from these accursed fates. The trick with Smoke is figuring out what to do with him after after this point, because he's very formless as a character. He's either a soulless robot, a pawn for the Lin Kuei, a pawn for Noob Saibot, and his real personality never really comes through. And whether intentional or not, this is reflected in his smoky powers. And even on a meta level, they don't know what to do with him. They keep changing his appearance, his name, his origin. So I think he should have some kind of moment later on where he comes into his own, and perhaps that moment should coincide with him upgrading his powers in some sort of way, or developing a new element, one that's far more tangible than the smoke he used up to that point. Food for thought.
Cyrax.
The only problem with Cyrax is that him and Smoke are somewhat interchangeable from a narrative perspective. They serve the same role, so we either don't turn Smoke into a cyborg to at least keep Cyrax looking a little more fresh, or we put Cyrax on this long journey of evolution where he first escapes his Lin Kuei programming, but then he goes a million steps further and evolves into God knows what kind of human AI hybrid that completely owns Sektor and later plays a role in saving humanity from some gigantic world-ending threat. I'm literally freestyling it at this point.
Kabal.
Kabal is bad, then good, then neutral. He's kinda like a great Jedi. Kyle Katarn comes to mind for any who still remember the old Star Wars expanded universe. A guy who's periodically tempted to go back to his nefarious ways but has enough common sense to keep himself from doing so. He should definitely challenge the Black Dragon, the organization that he was once a part of, infiltrating their ranks but steadily losing grip on his sanity and morality along the way, doing more and more disturbing things for them just to keep his cover, to the point where you're convinced he's really fallen until he pulls the rug from under you and the Black Dragon and shuts them down for good.
Motaro.
Motaro contrasts Goro in that he does not outgrow Shao Kahn like Goro eventually does, and remains by the Emperor's side, desperately trying to gain his favor, but ends up looking very stupid for it because Shao is eventually defeated and his people cast Motaro out for his poor judgment, which makes him resentful of his own people, and we can go down plenty of paths from there on out.
Nightwolf.
Nightwolf is gay. Nah, I'm just playing. Although it wouldn't be a problem if he were. He is kind of a loner, like, he's got this stoic look on his face, like women just don't do it for him, you know? Anyway, Nightwolf's an interesting character. There aren't that many that deal purely with the more spiritual side of things, so he could provide some valuable insight that other people can't. I see Nightwolf as a bit of a loner because his spiritual abilities allow him to see inside the hearts of people, and because the hearts of people are generally shitty, he tends to keep himself more or less away from society. At the same time, he tries, and sometimes struggles, to be as benevolent as he possibly can because of the title and duty he inherited from his tribe. He has a legacy to upkeep, just like Kung Lao, so the two could connect and relate to one another based on that. He's also a Native American, so he's one of the only people who can come close to relating to Reptile's state of mind, so I feel like Nightwolf could be one of the people that help set Reptile straight. Straight. I swear I'll stop.
Sektor.
Sektor's tough because he was literally designed to be one-dimensionally evil even back during his human days. He's loyal to the Lin Kuei to a fault, was probably born a sociopath, and the only friend he's ever managed to make is the color red. Now, as much as I like to give characters depth, or shit if I'm not the one writing them, I think trying to force depth or a sobby backstory on a character that was clearly not designed for it is like putting wings on a Prius and calling it a Boeing, or shoving a chicken out of an actual Boeing expecting it to fly. Thus, the feels can't be focused on Sektor, but rather on his former work colleagues like Sub-Zero and Cyrax, who defeat and reform the Lin Kuei and offer Sektor a chance to regain some of his humanity, but to their dismay, he refuses because in the absence of the old Lin Kuei, all he really cares about is evolution for its own sake, much like Triborg. In fact, you could easily morph the two characters together, and you can play around with this goal in plenty of ways, like have a situation where his enemy's actions actually coincide with what he sees as evolving sentience further, so he unexpectedly takes the good guy's side during a tense fight, albeit temporarily. And if we don't morph Sektor and try harder Borg together, we can definitely have the latter absorb the former, as he inevitably does, since he has access to Sektor's move, with the plot twist that Sektor actually welcomes his death, since it leads to one greater than he furthering his goal.
Sheeva.
Sheeva is loyal to the Shokan to a fault, a fact which often gets her in trouble due to pulling stunts like plotting against Shao Kahn as soon as she feels her people are being treated unfairly, until a wizened Goro from all of his experiences takes charge and aptly manages her, the Shokan, and their existing political alliances using not just brute force but also a fair bit of diplomacy. Sheeva takes this lesson to heart and eventually starts forging alliances with various realms, ushering an age of prosperity for the Shokan. She also discovers OnlyFans and crashes Earthrealm's economy with one tiny account.
Sindel.
I did touch on Sindel quite a bit in another video, but I'd just like to add that she should have more to do other than get killed, ousted, killed and ousted, and let her realm get conquered again and again, especially later in the story. I'd also like to explore what a Sindel that thinks she lost her daughters looks like. If she thinks Kitana died, coupled with all the suffering Sindel and her realm have been through, I think the velvet gloves would finally come off and we'd see not an evil, but a very vindictive, iron-fisted, maybe not the best choice of words, version of her. Kinda like a dark Raiden, which would shake up the situation in the realms in interesting ways. We've never really seen a justifiably unhinged version of Sindel. Yes, we have. It's called Mortal Kombat 11.
Stryker.
I made a video on Stryker, so I don't have to talk about him here. Lick in the description. Lick? Yes, lick the description, the cards, lick everything.
Chameleon.
Reptile detects signs of chameleon, signs like various ninja powers being used all at once with said ninjas all having alibis, activates his Witcher senses, and starts tracking him down only to find that A, it's actually Triborg, there is no chameleon, sad face, B, it's actually the K-meleon, and love ensues, I'm kidding, they hate each other, C, it is the chameleon, but he's such a fucking dick that Reptile gets disillusioned with his species and rips his fucking head off, or D, Reptile realizes that he was the chameleon all along, that he's been subconsciously copying people's powers for a long time and that it causes personality disorders, sleepwalking, nausea, vomiting, killing sprees, loss of memory, erectile dysfunction, and really, really bad breath.
Rain.
Up until now, Rain has been portrayed as Prince Zuko without the redemption arc. We can give him the redemption arc, which, although expected, would still be quite powerful and cathartic. Now that I think about it, Rain better resembles Zuko than Kung Lao does, a man stuck between two lives desperately clawing his way towards the one he thinks he wants, forsaking everything and everyone along the way. I see Rain as this hyper-powerful character, almost like a force of nature, that stays separate from the rest of the roster for the most part, doing his thing and just appearing at strategic intervals to fuck everything up, gaining more and more power along the way. I want him to screw over his allies, his people, his enemies, his best friend, which could be another assassin or soldier under Shao Kahn's employ, like Reiko, Reptile, or Skarlet, perhaps even overthrow Shao Kahn and occupy the throne, and then realize that it's not for him, and maybe he should have been less of a dick to people. Oopsie.
Chameleon.
Now, K-meleon, the one that actually exists, probably, yes, no, is a master manipulator.
Subversion on a massive level.
You see Chameleon for most of the overarching story, you just don't know that you do, because she can impersonate all of the various female characters you see. So sometimes you might have the actual Tanya on the screen, other times it's actually Chameleon. I have this scene in my head where Kitana's confiding in Jade, her bestie, her BFF, and as the conversation plays out, you keep getting subtle cues that something's off, like maybe Jade's standing next to a broken mirror or a piece of glass and her reflection is a little more crooked than it should be. Maybe there are some harsh, ominous shadows on her face. Maybe she has this subtle recurring nervous tic where she keeps twitching her fingers. The music starts to get a little more eerie and Kitana realizes that Jade didn't know something she was supposed to, and Jade hits her with the creepiest, most unnerving smile before the two spring into action like a cat that just got scared by its own reflection. A chase ensues, the mystery endures. Who is this woman? What does she want? Chameleon does this throughout key points in the story, seemingly destabilizing various alliances and organizations along the way. She's the ultimate mystery character. Her motives remain a mystery until the very end, and even then you can only piece the broad strokes together. And she's unpredictable to the point where you hold your breath every time you realize she's in a scene. Sometimes she seduces, sometimes she assassinates, sometimes she helps, and sometimes she does nothing, which is somehow the most unnerving of them all. Shades of Mystique from X-Men 2. I'm still not sure exactly what her first encounter with Bad Breath Tile should be, but there should probably be a bit of subversion there.
Subversion on a massive level.
Motaro.
Motaro is the MK equivalent of a Ken doll. He's pretty and useless. Pretty useless. Take this man's cool armor and his stupid back-mounted flags and make him a more powerful, more active counterpoint to Havoc's shenanigans. If Havoc's power is to actually reverse chaos happening to his body, continually destroying and rebuilding himself, then Motaro should be impervious to damage and thus change, a power reflected even visually through his armor. I'd also make him a master strategist that can predict things to a T and manipulate events to make sure everything maintains whatever amounts to order in his eyes. And to build on the dichotomy and irony of Havoc and Motaro, I also like the idea of Havoc not causing much actual destruction or full-on evil despite his menacing persona, sticking to mostly just hurting and rebuilding himself, while Hotaru, the Master of Order, ends up causing mini-genocide in order so that he can preserve his precious order. Irony and hypocrisy galore. What I like about Hotaru is that he doesn't seem like a bad guy on paper. He likes order, he likes to clean his room, organize his workplace, he's a little bit OCD, and if you move his water bottle 1 inch to the right, he'll stomp your fucking face in. No, but seriously, even him serving the Dragon King is somewhat understandable and gives credence to my thoughts about Onaga and his past reign being one of stability and prosperity, at least when compared to Shao Kahn's presidential run. I'd let him be a lackey for Onaga, then have a bit of a redemption arc once the Dragon King is defeated. I'd also explore Sato's hierarchy and have Hotaru rise through the ranks until he's supreme protector of the realm and gains plus 50 to his OCD score. Shout out to my boy Nebulous for helping brainstorm this character.
Meat.
A character that is not a character, yet still holds a soft spot in the community's heart.
For some reason.
I'm not sure what that says about the fandom. Are we so starved for good characterization that we'll latch onto every old piece of meat, literally, or that we have such low standards that we'll flog the hog to any piece of meat, or that our one true love is and always will be beating the meat, I mean nostalgia. Either way, we are carnivores of simple taste and want nothing but meat. Alright, fine, enough dancing around the issue. Meat is a mystery character. He appears at random points throughout the story and scares the shit out of everyone like a Jason or a Freddy, and could be linked to one of many characters, either Reiko, because Reiko is a body double for Shao, created in the flesh bits, perhaps Shang Tsung, it could be his new body after he was defeated and killed, he could be linked to Skarlet or to Havoc, or even Reptile. That's one of my top secret ideas that may or may not have anything going for it, but it could be Reptile after he got possessed by the Dragon King, and because he got body snatched, his soul was basically pushed out of his body, and it possessed something else or just reincarnated into this piece of meat that keeps skulking about in the background, hunting various characters, killing them and stealing their powers, because it turns out that this traumatic event supercharged Reptile's evolution and unlocked his chameleon genes. So you end up with this climactic moment where Onaga almost gets his shit pushed in by all the various characters that ally against him, but he just comes out on top, and in the last second when he thinks he's in the clear, a super-powered meat appears right behind him, boasting like hundreds of abilities, and proceeds to violate the fuck out of Onaga. At this point, Meat has grown some scales on top and looks half lizard. Or it could be none of these, and Meat actually turns out to be this Lovecraftian god of chaos, manipulating things behind the scenes for unknowable, disturbing purposes.
Jarek.
Delete this bitch-ass, shameless Kano copy of a character from existence.
Fujin.
Generally, Fujin and Raiden are considered bros, which is nice, but it's boring. I don't want Fujin to replace Raiden as protector of Earthrealm. The closer they are as friends and the more their roles overlap, the more redundant they become to each other. So I'd make Fujin a more reclusive, free-spirited god. Much like the Elder Gods, he doesn't really get involved in things unless absolutely necessary, and he's not really partial to Earthrealm in any way like Raiden is. Raiden actually tries to enlist his help once, but Fujin's like,
nah, it'll be fine,
and has faith that the universal scales will naturally balance out. Then, of course, he can have a badass appearance when you least expect it during Shinnok or Onaga's reigns of terror. Fujin is the Radagast to Raiden's Gandalf. But this is where it gets interesting, because after Raiden becomes Dark Raiden, that was the single geekiest phrase to come out of my mouth, and goes from defending the realms to conquering them through Mortal Kombat, Fujin starts to get worried. Imagine a story where Raiden has conquered every major realm except Outworld. Shao Kahn has been ousted, Outworld is in disarray, and its warriors will likely lose the Mortal Kombat tournament and die in the ensuing onslaught, and Fujin feels he has no choice but to intervene on Outworld's behalf. Fujin assumes the role of protector of Outworld and stands up to Raiden to try and maintain balance between the realms. Their character arcs are mirrored. Raiden goes from caring a lot about maintaining stability and defending the realms to not giving a shit, while Fujin goes from not really giving a shit about the realms to desperately trying to defend them. But they both co-evolve from being mostly passive forces that wait for things to happen to taking initiative and being a little more active on the cosmological scene.
Kai.
Let's be honest, the only reason Kai exists is so the White Lotus Society can have everything from his looks, specials, the gibberish that he spouts, and his winning starting pose suggests that. One of many nothing characters of the series, I'd upgrade Kai by turning him into Kraven the Hunter. He's got tiger tattoos for Christ's sake. Kai is not who he seems to be. He used to be a White Lotus member, got friendly with Liu Kang, then Kung Lao, then Raiden, then helped them defeat Shinnok, then disappeared. What this man is doing is learning from all of these people so he can become a better hunter. Even more chilling, he wants to learn how to hunt all of these people, good or bad. But he's not stupid. Studying them from afar will only get you so far. No, it's much better to befriend these people, train with them, learn all of their weaknesses, and keep doing that until defeating them becomes embarrassingly simple. His goal is to successfully hunt and defeat Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Shang Tsung, Motaro, Kitana, Mileena, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and perhaps even higher beings like Raiden and Shao Kahn. I'd also probably make him an Outworld native or half Edenian or something like that to justify a long lifespan and plenty of kills and experience gathered along the way. And one of the cool things about him is if he doesn't consider you a strong enough opponent, he won't bother to hunt you, which can lead to certain characters being spared and relieved, but also insulted that they're not strong enough to be taken seriously. It also builds a bit of hubris in Kai, as a couple of these characters that he spares, perhaps someone like Johnny Cage, go on to defeat Kai using trickery, teaching Kai a lesson on his arrogance and how to better review his targets. Kai would meet his match in the form of Erron Black, who's just as good a tracker, hunter, and fighter as he is, with just as much experience and just as long a lifespan. Imagine this game of shadows where they stalk and set traps for each other, just barely staying ahead of each other's moves, then ropes, grapples, explosives, every single trick in the book just to stay alive. Perhaps Erron Black is paid to kill a certain target who happens to be the same person Kai is hunting. But if Kai kills Erron's mark, he won't get paid. Erron could even end up in a situation where he has to protect the target against Kai so he can kill them later. And then Erron and the target become friends, but he still wants the money, so complications. Who should this character be? Give me some ideas down below. Kai could also be convinced at some point to work together with the Earthlings to have the chance to hunt some seriously rare and powerful prey like a Shao Kahn or a Goro. Actually, scratch that. Let's pit him against Kintaro. Let the two striped cat people duke it out.
Let them fight.
Quan Chi.
There is only one true Quan Chi, and that's this man right here, Adani Meropis. This is and always will be the definitive version of Quan Chi, just like J.K. Simmons is the definitive version of J. Jonah Jameson, and there is no other improvement that would be more significant than emulating, or better yet, having Adani portray Quan Chi in future games, just like they did with Kerry Tagawa. Reiko has his own dedicated video. Watch it, don't watch it, just do something with your life.
Tanya.
Number 1, bring back this annoying move and make it a quick fatality/brutality. Number 2, make her the prettiest girl in the room. Number 3, make her more devious than she's ever been. Tanya at her core is a deceptive character and a femme fatale. She does heinous things and justifies them as necessary for her survival, which is not entirely wrong, because sometimes it is a choice between deviousness and the axe. But she also takes this mentality too far and tries to justify it the same way. In her non-canon MK4 ending, she tricked Liu Kang and led him to his death. Just do that but more elaborate. Then pair her up with someone like Jade in a situation where they have to work together to survive, despite Jade's rabid compulsion to impale her top to bottom Dracula style for her betrayals. Then they save each other, then Tanya reforms and grows some backbone, but not really, not all the way, and she ends up in this morally ambiguous state where you don't quite know what she's gonna do next. Once again, think Mystique from the X-Men comics or the OG animated series.
Shinnok.
Imagine a scene where, after a brutal conflict, Liu Kang finally corners Shinnok and prepares to take him down, only for Shinnok to very calmly start revealing the true history of the realms to him and recount all the twisted, unjust shit that the Elder Gods and perhaps even Raiden instigated back in the day, and how mortals are nothing more than pawns in a sick cosmic game. All of this communicated with such charisma and persuasiveness that Liu Kang is completely dumbstruck and unsure of how to act. Shinnok's a former fucking Elder God. He shouldn't be yet another idiot conqueror who tries to brute force his way through the opposition, but rather the most persuasive, silver-tongued, frightfully knowledgeable individual you've ever met. Much like Lucifer from the Bible, he's not a native to hell. He comes from the highest echelons of existence, so his methods should reflect that. His main weapon is not what he does, but what he knows.
Borracho.
Let's stop fucking about, shall we, and change Baraicho from a fart meme that everyone tolerates but no one really wants into Uncle fucking Iroh from Avatar or Jiraiya from Naruto. This guy trained Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Kai the Champion Hunter, Shujinko the Walking Special Moves Repository, and Li Mei who won a Deadly Alliance hosted Mortal Kombat tournament. The guy's a living legend and I'm totally down with his carefree, deliberately meek persona. However, the devs forgot to give him his badass moments to contrast that and make you realize that when shit gets serious, he becomes extremely scary. In addition to all that, he keeps himself mostly around the story rather than in it, meeting a big chunk of the cast like Ermac, Scorpion, Nightwolf, Johnny Cage, Stryker, Rain, sparring with them and giving them tips and tricks on how to become better fighters, as well as sage advice on how to deal with their inner turmoil and achieve what they want regardless of their allegiance. For Baraicho's moral philosophy is a complicated one, positing that strengthening a person both physically and spiritually will, in the long run, lead to a positive outcome regardless of their moral predilections. His story eventually takes center stage, however, as he starts to feel more and more responsible for the champions he's trained. Li Mei sided with Onaga, Kai continues to prey on the unsuspecting, Shujinko fucked up and awakened Onaga, failure after failure, all challenging his philosophy. All this is brought to a head when he finally takes action and steps in to save Liu Kang and Kung Lao from certain death at Shao Kahn or Onaga's hands, whichever fits the chronology of events better, consigning himself to a hopeless battle, desperate to save the two pupils that actually turned out okay, and in spectacular fashion, many of the people he's trained appear and dogpile on the big bad, saving and vindicating Baraicho in the process. Some happen to be there by chance, others had a bone to pick with the final boss. This is the kind of cathartic moment I think the series could do more with. Bo is happy and goes back to drinking himself into a stupor, pondering the pointlessness of existence.
Draman.
Draman's not like other Oni. He used to be a human warlord that got killed and banished to the Netherrealm, and his appearance progressively degenerated into that of a demon over the centuries he spent trapped there. His mask keeps his rage under control. After being freed by Quan Chi into the mortal plane, he sets out to imbue his mask with the power to restore his human form. Unbeknownst to him, he is being tracked by Sub-Zero, who wants to use the mask to restore Noob Saibot's humanity. Interesting conflicts ensue.
That's great. Brainstorm.
Frost.
Frost can start out as part of the combat kids, replacing Jackie, cause that quickly sets up some conflict with her master Sub-Zero when he makes peace with Scorpion and or the Shirai Rai. She's a model student who quickly rises through the ranks, gaining Kuai Liang's full confidence, and then betrays him, revealing she was allied with Sektor/Triborg all along and thinks Sub-Zero's leadership of the Lin Kuei is
fucking lame!
Of course she's conflicted though, cause she grew to actually respect Sub while studying under him. And then the other guy she hated inadvertently saves her life but has no interest in her, so he binds and leaves her. She breaks free, keeps stalking and attacking him, eventually becoming his student. Weird sudden switch, I know, but this video's likely 4 hours already. And Scorps challenges a lot of her preconceptions and perhaps, why not, teaches her some new combat techniques, and Frost ends up being able to use not just ice, but boiling water as well. She becomes a full-fledged water user, able to manipulate it regardless of its state and temperature. Scorpion reluctantly teaches her a thing or two about honor, and Frost gains newfound respect for the master she abandoned. She returns triumphantly just in time to save Sub-Zero from Triborg, and then dies.
Suhao.
Suhao is a good counterpoint to Jax and serves as kind of a cautionary tale against Jax's compulsion to further augment himself with cybernetics. Humanity is a major theme for this character because he has a cybernetic heart and does some pretty evil, questionable things, but sometimes, rarely, he ends up helping the good guys. And while it seems like the small good he does is unwitting, you're always left wondering if that's always true. Visually, I just lose the fucking cap and make him a little more attractive. Keep it minimal.
Kenshi.
This time, NetherRealm can give themselves the right idea, cause in MKX, one of Kenshi's variations was called Possessed, and Kenshi's sword was all glowy red and broken into levitating pieces, and it summoned Demon Samurai, and they did nothing with that. Barrels worth of missed opportunities. We really couldn't have a subplot where Kenshi breaks his sword and gets possessed by his ancestors, deranged from centuries of captivity within the blade in order to save Takeda from certain death, but losing himself in the process, his frail body slowly disintegrating from the pressure of containing so many souls, prompting Takeda to step up, track down, and try to telepathically link with the souls to force them out while fighting an enraged Kenshi and trying to stay alive, and have Ermac swoop in and use his own much larger army of souls to pacify Kenshi's, thus repaying a debt he owed to both Kenshi and Takeda? Is that so hard to dream up? I didn't even take shrooms yet.
Takeda.
Basically do all the stuff I just said, and since we're on the topic, longtime viewers who know my usual stance on this will think I've gone mad, for I am about to advocate the unthinkable. Let's turn Takeda into Takeda. Look man, a soft-spoken, mind-reading ninja armed with not one but two whips, or more like retractable dagger tails for some added pain factor. Sounds like a woman to me. So yes, this once I'm advocating for a gender swap because male Takeda is boring.
Li Mei.
That plotline where Li Mei gets saved from embodying an undead Dragon King soldier only to come back with a heavy case of Onaga-chan infatuation is actually worth exploring. What is that? Why is that? Did her soul fuse with that of Onaga's soldier? Does Onaga actually possess a pheromone that makes people want to fondle his Dragon Ball Z? Was Li Mei shown something in that purgatory between worlds about Onaga's true nature? So many questions, no time to answer. Moving on.
Motaro.
All you have to do to fix this is just pull his pants down. None of that belly guard shit. I don't care how much you like your six-pack, do not make specialized armor for that shit. And look at this, go sleeve or no sleeve, none of this in-between crap. You look like you have whatever the opposite of OCD is, or you have Alzheimer and just forgot to put the other one on. Both on or both off, pick one and you're golden. Oh, and maybe actually put him in a game. His grapples are kind of redundant to both Takeda and Scorpion, so I think we need to find a different angle here. Perhaps something like a chakram, that's pretty versatile. And Motaro is supposed to be this intelligent guy, so this gives him a weapon that makes use of his wits. Or perhaps something like one or even two meteor hammers. This lets him keep that rope-like reach. Or, if we want something truly out there, I've long had this idea for a bone-based weapon, kinda like a dagger tail, but it looks more like the spine and tail part of a dragon's skeleton. Actually, let's go with that. A dragon tail. That's sort of linked to him and acts like a prehensile limb that can fold and extend and form various shapes. Can be used like a whip, a slashing instrument, an actual tail, and the individual vertebrae can come together to form something like a scythe to help him better decapitate his opponents and mow the lawn. After all, he is a leading figure within the Red Dragon clan, so sporting a dragon's tail seems befitting. Plot-wise, he could use the Red Dragon to sabotage the Black Dragon, the Lin Kuei, all the various militarized factions, and thus gain a monopoly on the hired assassins business, which would force interesting team-ups from all of these opposing factions just to survive. You'd see the Black Dragon working with the Special Forces working with the Lin Kuei, Democrats working with Republicans.
Mocap.
You must be joking. Fine. Johnny Cage recognizes Mocap as his old stun double, but then Stryker also recognizes him from his days in the army, and Kano also recognizes him as an ex-Black Dragon recruit. What the hell? Then we randomly see him in Outworld, and Baraicho also claims to have met him during his travels. Who is this guy? He has no flashy powers, yet he never seems to lose a fight. He acts normal, but never even hints at what he truly is or what he's truly after. He's able to match every fighter move for move, because the person this character is based on motion captured a big chunk of the cast, and his disposition is as friendly as it is unnerving. Is he a shapeshifter, a sorcerer, a god, a manifestation of some ancient evil? Nah.
Moloch.
Moloch is a big dumb brute, and he should stay a big dumb brute. He could also be a good counterpoint to Draman, who, in my interpretation, is obsessed with recovering his human form and will do any evil to become human so that he can keep doing evil, but this time human evil, whereas Moloch is a much less sophisticated pure Oni who can ironically be easily duped into doing some good things every now and then. As long as he remembers he's a big dumb brute.
Onaga.
I want Oni-chan's reign to last longer than your average sexual encounter, so I think Deception should have started a new, lengthier chapter in the Mortal Kombat saga, with Onaga taking over the mantle from Shao Kahn and reigning for about 3 titles similar to Kahn before him. So we'd have the Shao Kahn era, the power vacuum and transitionary game with Shinnok at the helm, and then we pass it over to Onaga, who should live up to his reputation as an ancient, kingly force to be reckoned with, almost like the past coming back to reclaim the present. Getting rid of him over the span of of one game just seems like a huge waste. He's the original ruler of Outworld, his revived form is more powerful than any other character in the series up to that point, and he's a dragon humanoid. The man's a walking Mortal Kombat logo. How cool is that? Because he's so powerful, Onaga gives you the opportunity to create a truly meaningful, bombastic, balls-to-the-walls endgame scenario involving a huge chunk of the characters, the kind that NRS keep trying to enact at the end of every fucking game and failing every fucking time. No offense, NRS, I love you guys, but if I hear the word timeline one more time, I'll start vomiting in 4D. I have a storyline in mind, kinda like a reimagining of Deception that I might or might not end up making a video out of, so I don't want to spoil too much, but let's just put it this way. The way I see it, the overall theme of Deception is resurrection. Onaga is revived, his undead army is revived, he himself has the ability to revive people, the Kamidogo are at risk of being united and thus reviving the One Being. In parallel, I'll also have a plot involving Havoc, Chaos Realm, and this mysterious force or spirit or phenomenon or god of entropy that plays a variation on the same theme, that of reversing entropy, thus reviving or rewinding things and people to their previous states. Watch the Havoc video to get a better idea of what I'm talking about. All of this creates an environment where a crap ton of characters are all set on a collision course with each other and with the Dragon King. Some want to stop him, others just want to survive, some want to ally with him and gain his favor so he'll resurrect someone for them, some want to backstab him and steal his heart, the source of his ability, and as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of characters are interested in resurrection or reviving the past. This temporarily allies a few and pits the rest against each other as interests either converge or conflict. As for Onaga himself, much like my Shinnok rant, I don't want this character to just be a nonsensical madman who wants to end all reality just for kicks. He doesn't fully understand what he's doing. The One Being works through many agents like Shao Kahn, Shinnok, and Onaga to try and revive itself, but this should never be a fact that these characters are aware of or consent to. That kinda defeats the fucking purpose. All these powerful rulers want to instate their rule, no one else's. The One Being is just using their ambition and megalomania against them, and the fact that these uber characters can't detect its influence on them hints at just how powerful this entity really is. My version of Onaga used to be powerful, ambitious, and ruthless, but also lawful and wise, seeking only to consolidate his realm and rule it unchallenged, until he got poisoned. Then he was like, alright fuckface, no more Mr. Nice Kaiju, and plotted his comeback with ruthless precision and became even more psychopathically despotic and fascist than Shao Kahn in the process. No longer content to just rule Outworld, he now wants to subjugate all realms and unite them under his rule, not realizing that that would awaken the One Being and change things forever. I'd also play up his regal, more divine side, where his words, charisma, political savviness, even sometimes his imposing otherworldly presence alone are enough to give some characters pause and instantly sway others to his side. This is not your average endgame boss. This is like a force of nature. When he moves, it's almost like the whole landscape moves with him. When he appears in a scene, everyone goes, oh shit. I want to see an elaborate campaign of conquest with lots of lethal force, but also diplomacy and ultimatums, where Onaga plays up his divine ruler shtick and just expects people to bow down to him without offering any resistance, which they often do. And then you'd have Chaos Realm, which would seek to undermine all of this, and Onaga knowing this and that that'll be the hardest realm to coerce, and planning a strategy to sweet-talk them with promises of blood, death, and chaos. A necessary stain on his dominion of absolute order. Deception's a pretty complex puzzle with a lot of moving parts, but one that's definitely solvable.
Serena.
Also known as MK character I wish was actually a thing number 37, Serena actually has some potential. I really want vanity to be part of her theme, partly because that's a juicy topic to explore, but also because she needs to set herself apart from Ashrah, who has similar goals to her, because they both want to escape their supposedly evil demonic heritage. Ashrah wants to purge her demonic self because demon bad, while Serena just wants to get the hell out of, well, hell. And to successfully live outside of hell, you need to look like you're not from hell. And that's where the vanity comes in. I'd make it so she escapes in the nether realm, but finds it difficult to maintain her human form in any of the other realms without draining people of some of their life force. This creates some delicious conflict, because she wants to be a good person, but as soon as she slips into her demon form, she gets persecuted, so she ends up skimming a bit of life force from people to be able to live among them and do good, but she's doing evil to do good, so is she really doing good? God. We can also entertain a tragic love story gone wrong with Bi-Han, the man, the myth, the legend, who became the Wraith, the Noob, the Saibot, whereby she feels indebted to him for sparing her life, and having been shunned by humanity, she chooses to stay by his side and help him conquer the Netherrealm. So what if he's a black tarry motherfucker now? It's an improvement, eh, Serena? Cause once you go black, you never go back.
Dairu.
Imagine if Dairu were played by Chow Yun-fat. That's it, that's all I got. Okay, look, Dairu is somewhere between a Batman and a Red Hood. He used to adhere to order and follow Sato's laws to the letter until his family got murdered and he decided to take the law into his own hands. After killing the man who was presumably responsible, the system he dedicated his life to shunned and imprisoned him. This is the Mortal Kombat equivalent of dedicating years of your life to a corporation and getting a 0.1% salary increase for your troubles after multiple negotiations, and then killing them all. The key to this character is tugging and testing his morality in the exact same way you do Batman's, except you come at it from the opposite perspective. Because Batman, in most interpretations, has never killed, but his compulsion to do so escalates in sync with the amount of nut jobs he fights. Darius, on the other hand, has killed. He did get to avenge his family, and has seen what the other side is like. He has now resolved to be a true vigilante, a punisher, killing any who stand in his way, yet questioning this new direction in the back of his mind more and more, like, we're murderers now, we cool with that, right? Right? Dairu should have the opportunity to kill several other characters throughout the saga to further his goals, but they should always be good or neutral characters, and Dairu should always either hesitate or just miss his chance ever so slightly, wondering if that would have been the right choice. A good character pairing for him would be Scorpion, someone who suffered a very similar fate to him, except worse since he's undead, physically incapable of moving on. The two would connect and travel together for a while, causing Dairu to further question his goals and beliefs. Picture a scene where Sub-Zero is fighting Quan Chi at the bottom of some Satan blast pit while Dairu is observing them from above in a control room. Having learned Scorpion's history, he knows how much killing Quan Chi would mean to him, how much revenge matters to Dairu himself, and he resolves to destroy the sorcerer at all costs. He reaches for a button that would ignite the blast pit and incinerate both Quan Chi and Sub-Zero, but Scorpion appears and grabs his arm before he could press it. He casually bitch slaps Dairu to the floor, then teleports down to rescue a battered Sub-Zero, allowing the sorcerer to escape. Although initially confused, this event eventually helps Dairu to figure himself out. Even as an undead specter who's reached the end of the path that Dairu put himself on, who's literally lost everything and stared into the gaping maw of hell itself, who has killed and forsaken so much for vengeance, even he concluded that protecting life is more important than damning it for the sake of revenge. This helps Dairu realize that he doesn't belong with Sato's government or with the revolutionaries trying to overthrow the government. He's something else entirely. Yet his true test is yet to come, because the games heavily imply that the true mastermind behind his family's death is
Darius.
I'm sorry, who let the Barrett cosplayer in here? You're about 52,000 miles away from the nearest JRPG convention. Who the fuck thought that goatee plus sunglasses equals otherworldly? We got boots, gloves, a sleek, modern-looking garb, a pair of Ray-Bans, and a bit of a Shamar Moore goatee situation going on. Cool, so what part of Earthrealm is he from? Is he like Black Dragon or Special Forces? Oh no, he's from Order Realm. He's from... What? Either I haven't smoked enough or you smoke too much. Probably both. Look, you can keep the shades, but make it look at least a little exotic or high-tech or otherworldly. Do like a Cyclops visor thing or like a thin golden reflective strip that runs all the way back. Maybe some headgear. Make his clothes a little bit more daring. He's the head of the revolutionaries, for Pete's sake. What the fuck am I doing here? Darius knows something. What he knows he can't explain. To prove what he knows, he needs to break into the headquarters of the Satan government. In Deception, he's trying to steal the Declaration of Order, which is lame, cause like, it's a piece of paper. Look, I stole a copy of the Constitution. Does that bother you? Nah, we're good. We got it in digital format, so you can have it. No, the thing stowed away in Sato's biggest vault should be far darker and more significant. How about a 4-dimensional map of the future predicting with frightening accuracy the universe's tendency to coalesce together into the one being, and how the Satans, in their zealous aspiration for ultimate order, are secretly trying to hasten this outcome, even if it means the death of of everything we know and are. So Darius's crusade is actually justified. He's not just a madman, but a madman with a point. And the reason why he knows this terrible truth, despite never having been in the vaults, is because Havoc indirectly showed him the truth, as Darius is just a pawn in Havoc's sick little game. So you have just enough pieces to enact a messed up, Mission Impossible political espionage conspiracy story with grandiose existential fantasy and science fiction elements. By the way, the anime convention's that way. Stay out of my sex dungeon.
Kira.
Deception, I love you, but you really overdid it with the nothing characters out of a vain desire for novelty. Found this cool costume on Deviant by Undead Mentor? I think that's enough of a contribution for her, don't you? Kira, who made you? Why make you?
What's the purpose?
What was the fucking point of this character? Seriously, these are not characters, they're names on a piece of paper that was supposed to go to the writers and world builders who were probably too busy snorting cocaine, so the pieces of paper wound up directly on the designers and artists' desks, and they were like, shouldn't there be more here? Sure, I'll squeeze an entire design out of my ass solely based on the name. It's the only way I get paid around here, apparently. Let's do something with the one speck of personality we have to work with, namely that she's an anarchist and a gambler. Kira is that crazy bitch who likes to play five-finger fillet with her and everyone else's hands and lives, and her sole purpose in life seems to be to derail the story as much as she can. Whenever a climactic, long-awaited duel is about to happen between two important characters, in comes Kira riding atop a freight train, crashing down through the ceiling and interrupting it. Why? Because. Slowly but surely, it's revealed that Kira is not as random and as stupid as she seems. She's actually a bit of a genius when it comes to predictions and probabilities, so all those near-death scenarios she gets herself into are actually expertly calculated, so there's a method to the madness. She's a mix of Domino and Palm from Hunter x Hunter. Look it up.
Dagon.
Full disclosure, I think everything about MK Armageddon is completely retarded, except perhaps the intro cinematic, which is low-key impressive. Although everyone suddenly entertaining a black and white good or bad alliance is also retarded. Dagon's feud with his brother aside, I find myself more drawn to the human-dragon hybrid plot that he orchestrated. What's the real reason behind it? Surely there are less cumbersome ways to attain multi-realm domination, and I think it should come down to something that Dagon knows. Something that his brother and the rest of the realms aren't privy to. Reptilians in general are quite fascinating in this universe. I have a whole video on this, and it seems they are the progenitor race, the powerful ancients that begot everyone else. MK is filled to the brim with dragon and snake motifs, exhibited by all sorts of characters to all sorts of degrees. Perhaps Dagon is trying to return the realms to the rule of the Draconids. Perhaps Taven went missing in some pocket realm where time flows differently, while Dagon stayed behind and learned all sorts of secrets from mommy and daddy that left him disillusioned about the gods. And within this grand narrative, which may turn out to be one eternal battle between gods and dragons, he may be trying to overthrow the gods and restore the Draconids to power. Dagon shouldn't be trying to kill his brother because of some sick contest. He should simply want the oblivious Taven to not get in his way, which, of course, he will.
Taven.
One other thing I like about Armageddon is the aging situation. Taven is the elder brother, yet Dagon looks much older and hardened because he's lived way longer than his sibling and has experienced some ugly truths about the realms. Taven does not know all these truths, and that makes for a good protagonist because we can discover all these juicy, controversial details through his rectangular, generic-looking self. By the way, dear, this shall never do. No. Taven looks like the wardrobe department ran out of wardrobe, like they made sure to properly clothe the extras, you know, the ones that go, gah, and then die, and forgot about their leading man. I'll lead my fist into your man if you don't do something about it. I'm not talking a full makeover, and we can keep the minimalist clothing, but perhaps have some slightly more overt stylized patterns and colors on it, and maybe give him some kind of Padawan braid or accessories around the brick with a goatee he calls a head. But again, I must stress that the minimalist aspect remain unblemished, because Taven is, after all, just a demigod. Just, lol. And a pretty plain and ignorant one, unaware of all the machinations machinations happening around him, so his garb should reflect that. One aspect of his story that I like and that should be explored way more in depth is the godly perspective. To see behind the veil of the gods, how they think, what they do, what porn they watch, what kind of sick version of Monopoly do they play with us mortals as currency. Imagine Taven seeing this whole landscape from above, seeing the events of past games unfold in a cold, dispassionate way, walking in on a couple gods commenting on things you could not even fathom. Intimations, interpretations, chilling predictions of the future, macabre secrets of the past. But above all else, realizing just how much of a cunt your average god is. Perhaps that's Taven's arc. To start out indifferent and end up renouncing the gods, unable to continue justifying the insidious game that the gods play. And I'll be honest, the brothers are cool, but I'm much more fascinated with mommy and daddy. I find it very telling that both children inherited the mother's element, the parent who's not even part of the god club, but she is a sorceress, possibly with her own agenda, seducing and manipulating a god with her bogus prophetic dreams so she could bring some sick cosmic plan to fruition, which includes bearing 2 demigod sons, both of them coming pre-installed with her bewitching fire magic, all of which Taven must uncover, resist, and come to grips with in order to save Edenia from the foul, fickle, fiendishly furious flames of his forsaken, fanatically fussy fucking femme fatale mother.
D'Vorah.
I got a quick fix for D'Vorah that starts out like her name does. Delete. No, I got a better one. You remember the Koreans from Mortal Kombat Conquest? The all-female hive race whose queen mated with powerful warriors, resulting in their deaths and thousands of female soldiers with the victims' genes being born in a day, ready to Zerg rush a realm to pieces? Just do that. Or even if you don't do that, I respect the creepy bestial kinks of any man who respects my own, but I think we've had our fill of slimy, earwax D'Vorah and could do with a design refresher. Picture a beautiful, tall, statuesque, and enigmatic golden woman who plays ambassador, advisor, and consort to many powerful leaders of many different realms, and eventually revealing herself to not actually be a woman at all, but rather a mass of alien insects that can all mesh together to take whatever shape they wish, just like nanotech. That is D'Vorah. And perhaps that is the entire collective whole of the Kaitin race, because that makes them at once overpowered and very vulnerable and limited in what they can do, so they have to use subterfuge to invade stuff and get what they want. Alternatively, you could mesh the Rachni with the Reapers from Mass Effect, whereby the Kaitin are legion and D'Vorah is a small part of them acting as vanguard and trying to pave the way for the rest, undoing a magical binding that shuts off portal access to their accursed realm, *S*, which would make for a decent spin-off story, but a bit harder to weave into the main one without overshadowing everything else and overstaying its welcome. And once the invasion fails and the Kaitin are more or less liquidated, D'Vorah remains as this lone, isolated last vestige of its people, forced to forge, this time genuine, alliances with various people to stay alive. But the problem is you never quite know if she/it, yet more appropriate diverse pronoun use, is 100% genuine, and my problem is I have an obsession with wildly duplicitous characters, but hey, they help write good stories and surprise you in the bedroom.
Erron Black.
And we finally arrive at the one character I've been dreading to talk about because I stubbornly want Erron Black's identity to matter in some monumental way, but I got nothing. Sure, we can talk about how they completely wasted him in both story modes he was in, how to turn him into one of the very best bounty hunters in all the realms, who's truly neutral and switches allegiances during dire climactic scenes because the target suddenly offered more than his employer, or just something that happens to be of more value to Erron because they did their research on him, so he changes from foe to friend in an instant. We can throw in the Kai plotline from earlier, but I wanted something more. I don't know, I just saw him for the first time and thought, there's something this mysterious man is hiding behind that mask. Lips, no lips, mandibles, Tarkatan teeth, another mask, Matt Damon. Erron really is a Kakashi type character to me. And MK11 just casually took his mask off, and for the sake of goddamn gear variety, the most superfluous of reasons. Anyway, I'd like this unmasking to either be a big reveal for all of us, or a big deal to the in-game characters that get to see him without his mask, but it's never really shown to us, so we're left scratching our heads trying to piece together who or what this person really is, why everyone's so shocked about him, and there would be hints and clues that point to 2 or 3 logical options. I just haven't figured it out yet. By the way, here's a mini revelation for you. You ever notice that Havoc is also, in his own way, wearing a mask? If you zoom in on the part of his face that looks like it French-kissed a xenomorph, it's basically the size and shape of a ninja mask. I mean, this obviously doesn't work for MK1 *2 because his identity is not a secret there, but since such a ninja mask is enough to conceal someone's identity, Havoc could also be someone we've already met. And this corroborates well with my idea of him being the definition of method to the madness, cause he seems totally random and chaotic, but all of that may or may not be just a front and hide some dark revelations underneath. You know, maybe, technically, no, it's too far-fetched. Thought for food.
Ferritor.
I like that they thought up a race of symbiotically linked creatures. I hate that they depicted them as Master Blaster from Mad Max 3 verbatim, so they'd need a bit of a redesign. Perhaps the little one lives on the stomach of the big one and can come alive and shish kebab the opponent while they're held helpless by the big guy. Or maybe the brat lives up top, yet they integrate into a sort of two-headed, multi-armed Hindu figure, the Destroyer of Worlds, and still make the main guy a towering, hulking figure, but perhaps once again with some Indian or Persian motifs and garments to give them a bit more grace and personality instead of just hodoring it all the way. Story-wise, I got nothing. As I say that, I did think of something. You see, Ferritor could tag along with the good guys until one of the not-so-good guys kidnaps Farah and threatens to kill her unless Tor does as he's bid, cause neither half can survive without the other for more than a few days before they both die. So Tor goes on a rampage in the name of the kidnapper, and it's revealed that his race is ungodly powerful, so much so that one of them was able to cripple the heroes almost completely. The reason why you never hear about them is because they're extremely benign and private as a people and don't like to get involved in the affairs of the realms. The unstable Tor has grown towards the end of his life cycle, where intelligence is low and testosterone-fueled rage is off the charts, so distinguishing between friend and foe is bad enough with his partner, so this becomes a really tough inner conflict for a normally benevolent being to deal with. Kill everyone to get Farah back, sacrifice Farah and himself to stop the killing. Also, I feel like killing anyway because I have steroids for brains, but then he could bond with a psychic like Takeda, Kenshi, or Ermac and gain help and serenity when he needs it the most. Okay, I guess I'll be here all day.
Jackie Briggs.
Delete this bitch-ass character immediately.
Kotal Khan.
Oh boy. MKX did a good job showing Kotal's unique challenges taking up office after Shao Kahn pissed all over it. The problem is they have the man crumble and make bad decision after bad decision that just paint him as a petty, cowardly, incompetent cunt. By all means, show his ruthless side, it's pretty much a mandatory part of ruling Outworld, but have him come off as more of a clever player of the political game, purposefully misinforming some allies about his plans, telling the truth to others, making a whole lot of people mad just so he can figure out whom he can trust, Tyrion Lannister style, and then ousting the traitors and rewarding the rest. If we're talking MKX's plot, instead of cowering before Shinnok and offering to flog his log, Kotal would instead parlay with him on equal footing. Having been a much better ruler than what the actual MKX showed, he'd have secured a very large, powerful sort of NATO alliance with multiple realms, forcing Shinnok to enter negotiations with him or risk incurring crippling casualties otherwise. A stalemate is reached, and Kotal seems like he'd be willing to ally his forces with Shinnok's, but chooses to backstab him last second, causing us all to stop booing and start cheering. Alternatively, you could just give his wheelchair some spinning rims. I think that's a good enough fix.
Kung Jin.
I don't see the point of this character. There's arguably some cool bits to work with, like this hooded old vagabond limping from place to place with his walking stick, which turns out to be a giant bow, and he turns out to be not old at all, but a young man on a mission. All of this possibly revealed through an epic bar fight scene, but I don't think you need to make him Kung Lao's relative. In fact, I think it would be better if you weren't. MKX's nepotism fetish is what made most of these characters unpopular enough to axe out of the franchise. He could still be an old man on the inside, a guy who's immune to aging and who wants to learn from the best masters of all the realms in order to become the next champion of Mortal Kombat, but who hides a darker purpose because he's a bit of a soul stealer. He doesn't completely steal souls, but just skims some energy off the top. His arrows could maybe do this too. Them draining the opponent's meter is a good analogy for this. He does this because he thinks his existence is crucial to maintain stability between the realms as he plans to fight as champion and defend whatever realm is going to be contested and keep it from getting conquered. His origin is unknown, by the way, and he's hinted at being of mixed descent from multiple realms, so he can technically fight for all of them, which is nice and all, except he's causing illness and decay everywhere he goes, dressing up his arguably arrogant selfishness with a for the greater good cloak and blah.
Tremor.
Tremor could be this guy who's ridiculously powerful physically, but with an equally frail ego to match. He's so good that he's fucking bored with most events around him, and it turns out he's only with the Black Dragon out of boredom and to get a chance to eventually show off. Eventually, he betrays them. He feels like his power should be acknowledged, and that if it isn't, he's doing something wrong. He takes part in some of the more significant events of the saga, mostly just for shits and giggles, and to deliberately mess with other characters who are taking things seriously, and to show them what he can do, not realizing that no one gives a shit. You, of course, infer most of this. It's implied. He denied if you accused him of this outright. No, I'm not playing lava polo just to show off. I didn't murder the entire Black Dragon clan with one arm behind my back to show you how awesome I am. I'm trying to vex, not flex. Triborg. Practically everything that they thought up for this character of questionable canonicity is great. They just need to actually fucking do it. Doesn't matter if you go the Sektor route, the Chameleon route, or the standalone route. Just implement this idea of an AI amalgamation of the best skills and powers of the best fighters. It's the ultimate weapon and a force to be reckoned with. Someone who's surreptitiously kidnapping, killing, or stealing people and data, assimilating them into itself. You have your main story that draws most of the attention, and every now and then you'd have a random scene with this guy showing up unexpectedly and whacking some unsuspecting character, or infiltrating some facility, downloading its entire database, and then fucking off. And then at the end, this uber-powered being shows up and bodies everyone out of nowhere. Something like Amazo from the Justice League series. Only thing to fix, really, is the autistic name. Triborg. How about try harder?
Cetrion.
Oh boy. Most of me is fine with deleting this character. She does very little to justify her existence and is part of some really simplistic last-minute lore that turns Shinnok into a generic god of death, her into a generic god of life, and their mother into a generic copy-paste of Greek mythology but with shiny legs and stage 4 cancer. I say most of me because the rest of me actually wants to keep this character alive, if for no other reason than us only ever meeting one elder god beside her, brief interlude scenes and animations notwithstanding. And as a basic foundation for a character, a female elder god that can control all 4 primary elements is a pretty good start. In researching her, I discovered that the name Cetrion might be derived from the Roman god of fertility? Seriously? And you have her look like that? Where's the jugs, the hips, the thighs, the fertility goddess with 16 teeth? Instead, they made her look like that ant that thinks she's still got it. Yeah, she don't got it. Oh well, the name more likely comes from the Slavic word for 4 anyway, because of the 4 elements she controls. Her being a goddess of life or nature or renewal or whatever she's supposed to be is probably a good idea too. It even fits with my power system because earth, wind, and fire, and water create soul in my headcanon, the ultimate life-giving element. And wouldn't you know it, Cetrion just happens to control the 4 elements and also happens to grow a bunch of weeds on command. Cetrion the god of weed? Might be a winner. So I like her identifying as Hashirama Senju. Wait, I like a little too much about this character. Story-wise, obviously give her something better to do than becoming a fucking tool for another fucking tool. Here's the deal. Cetrion should be one of the only people in this mythos who can legit bring people back to life. Completely. But there are strict rules against it since the Elder Gods are not allowed to play favorites and let that dictate the power balance between the realms, tip things too far in one direction or the other, and some truly horrifying cataclysmic events could ensue, like the Oscars. So how about a plot line involving Dark Raiden, whereby after seeing most of Earthrealm's heroes and defenses decimated, he goes into full Iron Fist mode and enacts a plan to kidnap Cetrion and force her to resurrect Earth's forces en masse. The balls on this motherfucker. He recruits all sorts of strange allies from different realms, forces we haven't seen before, and corners Cetrion, isolating her from the other elders and their agents while also challenging other realms to Mortal Kombat, employing the tried and tested strategy of the best defense is a good offense. Cetrion recognizes the taint of the one being within Raiden and does her best to reason with and educate him, explaining quite eloquently how what he's doing now is no different than what Shao Kahn or any of the other despotic conquerors were trying to do, and that agreeing with his demands would only bolster Raiden's forces of conquest, leading all the realms one step closer to annihilation. Raiden, of course, doesn't listen, and he and his forces dogpile on Cetrion, who goes full Neo and fights off countless assailants, including Raiden himself for a long time, showcasing some truly awesome prowess and powers in the process. But even an Elder God can't hold their own forever, and she's slowly tired out, whittled down, and defeated. Faced with a choice between compliance and certain death, she chooses death. Because even though the rules of the Elder God Treehouse Club state that she should prioritize her safety at all costs because she's the only one who can resurrect the other elders should they fall, the party healer if you will, she realizes the hypocrisy in that, in applying the rules to everyone except the elders, and so she tells Raiden to kill her and hunt the other Elder Gods down, implying that they all deserve it, corroborating Shinnok's own damning revelations about the gods. Now, Raiden might oblige, or more interestingly, he might offer her a place at his side. Since she's not willing to give life, perhaps she can be persuaded to take life, joining him in the hunt for the other Elder Gods. And Raiden's smart. Part of why he's doing this is to give himself more time to find a way to steal her powers or absorb them or convince her somehow. But the broad point is I want to do a reverse of MK11 where instead of being introduced as a good character then turning into a piece of shit, she's introduced as an unrelatable, seemingly heartless character but eventually becomes more sympathetic in the player's eyes. Visually, she needs an almost complete redesign. I like the flowing rocks that she's, rocking, but the fucking seaweed dress and stalactites are definitely overkill. It's okay, you don't need to telegraph the mother of nature thing that hard. Just give her a sleek, elegant dress. And actual shoes. Geras. I don't quite like Geras. Of all the wild, colorful, mythological elements they could have drawn upon for this character, they just went with a dude. The most generic, nondescript looking dude possible. Be honest with yourself. If Geras walked past you in Times Square, you wouldn't go, "That's Geras." You'd go, "That's the man I saw in Mom's bedroom last night." Or one of them at least. Dunno which, they all look the same. I know Geras is a Greek figure, but perhaps we could also borrow from Egyptian and Persian mythology, get some fancy headgear, some thick braids, a veil. Alternatively, we could just mocap Christopher Judge. Story-wise, I'm not a fan of the time travel stuff, so we'd have to figure out a different origin and role for him. It's funny cause when talking about Cetrion, I was just thinking that there should be another Elder God whose main power is knowledge, both predictive and of the past. One who's the nerd of the group, who does all the calculations and predictions and tells everyone how to avoid huge butterfly effects and keep the one being dormant. And since Geras is literally the god of old age in Greek mythology, MK's version of Geras, who's been around since forever and has clairvoyance, could be that Elder God. Food for thought.
Collector.
Delete this bitch-ass character. Seriously, do I really need to explain this one? We've got a race of 4 armed people. You know what would be absolutely revolutionary? Get this, a race of 6 armed people. Someone got paid to think up this character. Think about that. And this is a pointless discussion because Collector was created for the sole purpose of being the mascot of MK's first ever loot-based bonanza to get the kiddies hyped up for microtransactions. I know it, you know it, Geras knows it, so let's just agree to never mention him again. Chronica. You know what? Unlike most people, I actually think Chronica has a lot to work with. It wouldn't take that much to make her shine, and there are some smart motifs you can use to create a compelling narrative. I'm only joking, delete this bitch-ass character from all timelines. The only thing worth preserving is those shiny legs, cause those... man, they are quite enthralling. I never would have thought of that, but... what was I saying? Ah yes, delete. I suppose I made this video to vindicate those of you who think there's a lot of untapped potential here, because you're right. Mortal Kombat is a goldmine of underutilized characters and epic story possibilities. Not that anyone's gonna tap into any of it, instead of sticking to the drab stuff we currently have. So these ideas are as likely to get explored as I am to get fully animated instead of being relegated to the same 2 frames worth of overused art assets. But you never know, I'd never count Mortal Kombat out, cause to me, this franchise is like a gargoyle. Right now, it seems like a still and lifeless statue, but it might just come alive right when you least expect it.